Hi, everybody. This is Dan Stolbarger, back in the United States, back from Israel and a short jaunt to Poland. This is the week of March 20th, and we're reintroducing our YouTube portion of our Middle East update. Let's just start with our news bites, what's going on. Having returned from Israel, I should say this to begin with. If you thought that here in the States we have issues with the media getting truth, not having our opinion shaped by a corrupt media, let's just face facts, exponentially, Israel is far worse than we are. There's such a mirror that I see between Israel and the U.S. through leadership or whatever. But whereas in the past, the media would be what I would consider the bulk of the media would be anti-Republican, anti-Trump, anything right-wing. In Israel, exponentially, it is anybody but Bibi. Anybody but Netanyahu. So again, just keep that in mind when you're encountering judicial reform, massive protests, etc. Keep in mind that concept of, am I really getting the truth from what's being portrayed through the media? Okay, with that being said, judicial reform, big issue in Israel right now. Renowned attorney Alan Dershowitz actually says the judicial reform in Israel is all about trying to undo the election. This is all about the left wanting to get rid of Netanyahu. And then, Sharon and I, when we were leaving for Poland about a week ago, massive demonstrations, riots. No, I shouldn't say riots, just massive demonstrations, closing off freeways, roads. And the threat was Bibi was leaving for, I think, Italy at the time, and they were going to close off the road to Ben Gurion Airport. We had a flight in the evening, and we had no idea whether we could actually get to the airport or not. So I can, if you can kind of get that picture in your mind, you're talking about 100,000 people in the streets. And so the growing lawlessness of the leftist rioters, again, you've got leftist IDF that basically are refusing to come in, the reservists are refusing to come in to serve. The police are taking steps back in terms of an aggressive reaction to dealing with rioting, I guess you would have to say, these mass demonstrations. And keep in mind, if Bibi is ignoring the 100,000, his concept is simply going to be, or his response is going to be, last November 1st, we had over 3 million people voting for this government to do exactly what we're doing. And so this is just the left's attempt to, as Dershowitz said, to undo the election. Interesting that the U.S. is sticking its nose into all of this, but it's been 11 weeks into his third stint as prime minister, and Netanyahu has yet to be received at the White House. Obviously, this is signaling an apparent U.S. disagreement over the policies of this right-wing government. And then this is our News Bites area. Again, just the libel and the lying that's taking place. There were 3 jihadist fighters in Jenin that were terrorists. And of course, the Palestinian Authority headlines that Israel assassinated 3 young people driving in their car, when the reality was that this terror cell brags about having 3 jihadist fighters that were killed in battle. You see the difference between the two? You see where media fits in here? And then we're going to talk a little bit about, of course, Iran, Hezbollah, China, Russia. Russia now is hardening its tone regarding Israel's, as they would call it, Israel's violent attacks in Syria must stop. And having just been on the Golan Heights with our friend Ilan Shulman, IDF, intelligence, talking about what's really happening with these airstrikes, whether it's Aleppo or whether it's Damascus, that this is Israel's attempt to keep Iranian technology that will turn Katyusha rockets into precise rockets. The Katyushas, you sort of have to line up and sort of guess what the aim may be, but precision, that's what we're dealing with this day. Precision rockets. There are, it's like a suitcase size technology that allows these Katyushas to have precise targeting, and that's what Israel is trying to keep from going from Iran into the hands of Hezbollah. Keep in mind, Hezbollah has over 200,000 rockets. So keep all that in mind. And then speaking about Hezbollah, there was just a roadside bombing that took place outside of Megiddo. And Defense Minister Yoav Gallant basically said, we've just prevented a very serious incident. But the question is how did a terrorist manage to cross from Lebanon to Israel's Megiddo Junction, leave a roadside bomb, and then make his way back? And again, there's no doubt about the location. This person was apprehended. The army said the soldier stopped a car that was carrying this bombing suspect at a checkpoint on Monday, shortly after the roadside explosion seriously injured a driver near that Megiddo junction. The suspect was wearing a suicide vest, had a rifle and a gun, and in Israeli terminology, he was neutralized. But the question is how did this take place? And it's raising the issue of, are there undetected underground tunnels, much like what we see in Gaza, going from Lebanon border into Israel? And so this is a big deal that's taken place at this particular time. As we think about Hezbollah, what's interesting is that 2 issues have caused grave concern to Israeli forces, IDF, and that's the coming together of Hamas and Hezbollah, as well as Saudi Arabia and Iran. As the Saudis, in a sense, sidle up to Iran, some think it's because of the U.S. apathy. Some look at the political climate, the chaos in Israel, that the Saudis are basically saying, we need financial, trade, support, and this unrest that's taking place, the U.S.'s lack of allowing us back into the inner circle, in a sense, has created what might our options be in terms of the Saudis now turning towards Iran. And then we have this Hezbollah-Hamas axis, grave concerns for Israel. Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, again, has returned to his pet subject, and that being Israel, and basically saying they will not exist much longer. So the cauldron is beginning to bubble over. And again, you're dealing with Sunni Shiite oil and water alliances that's causing grave concern. Again, the Saudis and the Iranians together, bolstered by the Chinese and the Russians, by the way. And then you have Hamas, Sunni, and you have Hezbollah, Shiite, joining forces. And we often talked about the biggest threat to Israel is a multi-front invasion, I guess you would say. You've got Lebanon up in the north, as I've already mentioned, hundreds of thousands of rockets. And then, of course, in the south, you have Gaza. And, of course, in the northeast, you have Syria, the Syrian border. What happens if the three of these kind of come at Israel all at once? That's the issue. This next article, by the way, this being back now and doing this YouTube for the first time, this usually I try to keep these between 10 and no more than 15 minutes. This may go a little longer, FYI. What are we doing is sort of the name of this next article. Commando training. The Biden administration officials recently proposed a plan to provide 5,000 Palestinians with commando training in Jordan and then deploy them to the areas that the PA sort of controls. The 5,000 officers that will be trained commando style will be given 5,000 rifles that will be taken into Palestinian cities and towns where almost every Palestinian now has a weapon already. But any time that the U.S. has funded or armed or trained Palestinian militias, the targets have not been other terrorist groups. You guessed it. The targets are Israelis. And so why do we think that this would be anything different? Again, we talk about Hezbollah, we talk about Hamas, we talk about the Iranians, we talk about the Syrians, we talk about the Russians, we talk about the Chinese, and what are we doing in the midst of all of this? Well, what are we doing may have to do with a concerning new poll. In a poll that was just released last Thursday, sympathy among U.S. Democrats was higher for the Palestinians, listen, than Israelis. For the very first time since Gallup polling service began asking this question in 2001, U.S. Democrats concern for Palestinians higher than Israelis. Some think that this shift that's taking place is driven by younger Americans who have more of a mixed opinion of Israel than their elders. Again, I can go through that litany and ask, what are we doing? And now our concern is more for the Palestinians than Israel for the first time ever. That is among U.S. Democrats. Palestinians, okay? Next article from the Palestinian Authority's Prime Minister. He wants to honor the International Women's Day. And so he goes on to say, Palestinian women are at the top of the list, praiseworthy when it comes to International Women's Day. And when asked why, you know what his answer was? Because they are terrorists and because they are murderers. Because they are mothers of terrorists who have the ability to withstand tragic moments for the sacrifice of redemption. Once again, this is a peace partner. When I hear Biden say, hey, keep the two-state solution alive, I got to say, are you kidding me? This is the peace partner? Let me remind you of what the Quran actually says that comes to pass. That's what they're living. In the Quran, it says, kill them wherever you find them. That's a verbatim quote from the Quran chapter 9, verse 5. And it goes on. This was just stated by the Palestinian leadership. If you're a tradesman, use a nail gun to nail the heads and crucify them on woodwork. If you're a truck driver, run them over. And then I always give you photos or captions, and one of the Palestinian Islamic leaders says, kill them doesn't mean to kill them, or maybe it does. Peace partners. Palestinian school teachers are striking. The teachers of the PA are striking because the Palestinian Authority is not paying their full wages. They've reneged on their promises that they made in 2022 and 2023. And the reason why they're not paying the salaries is because they're paying hundreds of millions of shekels to terrorists. Pay for slay. As again, Abbas says, even if I'm left, this direct quote, even if I'm left with 1 penny, I will pay it to the families of the martyrs, to the prisoners, to the wounded, to the shihad. And how much of our funding, support is going to paying for people that are slaying? Pay for slay. Well, a couple things. Our friend Amir Safati had a great time in Israel with Amir, had dinner together. And this, he has an article here that I've just taken in verbatim. I am pretty much out of time, so I'm going to encourage you to read through it in detail. It's got to do with the judicial reform and really the vibe that's happening in Israel today. And so that's our report for this week. Good to be back, kind of. I love to be in the land. Feel it much home. I feel as I'm home. Let me say this again. I feel that Israel is as much as a home as here in northern Idaho. I'm kind of split when it comes to that. But it's good to be back. It's good to reconnect on YouTube. Share this with your friends. Again, if you're not involved in KFIR, in our global ministry, get signed up today. We need to be people that are committed to the Word of God. We need to be people that are like the sons of Issachar, that understand the times and know what we should be doing. It's time to roll up our sleeves and get with it. Amen. God bless you and shalom.